so you get that right. So I'm Jane Bozarth from North Carolina. I was a classroom trainer. I was an e-learning designer. I was a program manager. I was a terrible bureaucrat, but I wrote books and got kind of famous from doing things like that. And now I work for the Learning Guild as their director of research. We publish one report a month. These are free and they're available for download at learningguild.com. So today I want to talk about, we talked about performance outcomes. I'm not sure that title, the subtitle is what I submitted, but I want to talk about the data we have, how we could be getting better data easier, how we can tie that data to real measures, where we can look for maybe other forms of evaluating what we do that maybe you haven't heard of. And I have to aim at a button. Okay, there we go. So one of my interests in this started many years ago. I had a friend, my friend Cindy Thacker, worked at a hospital. And because it was a hospital, they had a great demand for backup electricity if the power failed. You know, if there was a storm or lightning or something. Her office was these were right outside her office window, these big generators. And every Friday, the engineers at work came by with their clipboards, and they would run the generators for half an hour, and they would check it off their checklist, and they would go about their way for a week until they returned on the next Friday. So we had Hurricane Floyd hit North Carolina. Power went out everywhere. Power went out at the hospital. The generators kicked on, and they ran for 30 minutes. Because what you measure is what you get. They never tested them to run for 3 days, to run under the storm, to support when they needed to. So let's talk about why you measure. Tell us, why are you measuring anyway? How many of you are measuring because of the LMS? That's the reason. You're measuring because you have a machine. How many are measuring for a human being? You want an employee to feel more confident about doing their job. You want a customer to feel that they've received empathetic call service, okay? How many of you are really worrying about the bottom line or your financials? So there are a number of reasons that we look at this kind of thing, and those are the sorts of things I hear about the most. One thing, though, I don't hear, people don't do a very good job beginning at the end in mind. What is it you really want to know? Do you really want to know that Jane is more confident? Do you really want to know that the customer feels they were being treated empathetically? Maybe you do. But we tend to wait until everything's done to start evaluating what we did. So think about what it is you're trying to do, what it is you're measuring for, what it is you're hoping to get from it, because there's several things we can do. We are very, very good at getting descriptive data. This happened. This many people went, and they sat for this many hours, and we had this many completions, and this many people passed the test. And this many people can do X, Y, and Z. We're very good at descriptive information. When we start looking at diagnostic information, well, why did this percentage of people fail the test? Well, why did we have such a long time to completion? Well, what went on that caused us to do so good or so badly? What are our root causes? What are the reasons for the increased errors? What is the reason for the high turnover? Okay. We can look at predictive information. This is where we start to see our smart systems kicking in. Predictive information is when Amazon tells you, if you like this book, you might like that book. If you like this course, you might like that course. So it's predictive, and it's often based on some of the analytics we're getting now. And then there's prescriptive, which is when it tells you what to do. If you didn't pass this class, then you need to take that class. If you want to be on this career path, then you do that. It's more prescriptive than just recommendations. It may kick in and make decisions for you. So let me ask you, what are you doing now? How many of you do what we call smile sheets at the end of something? Did you like it? Did you finish it? Were the donuts good? All right, that sort of thing. How many of you are doing any kind of callback to managers? Is the employee doing this? Are they performing? How many of you are doing things like looking at performance reviews? Did performance change over a period of time? How many of you go back and check error rates, costs incurred? All right. So thinking about what you're doing now, let's talk about maybe what you could do a little bit better. How many of you have at least one LMS in your organization? How many of you know what you paid for that? We're on the committee. How many of you for your LMS was it $500,000 or less? 500,000 euros, some of you. How many of you paid €1 million for an LMS? How many of you paid more than €1 million for an LMS? How many of the LMSs have subscription rates where you have to, like it's a service, software as a service? How many people does it take to run the LMS? How many admins do you have? 2? Held up fingers. Like how much does that cost every year? So you've got this really expensive equipment, this software that can tell you a lot of stuff, and we're really still only counting completions, right? So here's what I run into in my job. We regularly survey our membership. We have almost 100,000 members. We routinely survey them about things like authoring tools and LMSs and use of technologies. When we did a recent survey on LMS, the people who answered, who said they had just bought one or had recently or had participated in buying an LMS, said 80% of them said the priority was reporting and analytics. Those same people, when we said, how are you using the LMS, said the same percentage said we're using it to confirm completion. 60% of them said we're confirming use of the product. How many people access the LMS? How many times they access the LMS? How much time? They're not even looking at the training they deliver. They just want to see if anybody's using this $1 million software. 10% of them don't look at the data at all. So something is disconnected here when we say we have all these needs to evaluate. We want to tie to bottom line. We want to tie to outcomes. But then we have these systems that do it for us, and we don't take advantage of that for what it can do. Why not? Why aren't we looking at this data? Why don't we make more use of data? How many of you don't look at it because it's hard? It's just too difficult. C'est difficile, is that how we say it? How many of you don't have anyone on staff who can really interpret the kind of data I'm talking about? Okay, I had a wonderful experience with this. We had a woman on staff for years. She was great at descriptive. This happened and this many people did it at this time and this. We had a new guy come in who was very good at taking a massive data and telling a wonderful story with it that made us feel what we were doing had much more meaning, that helped us make sense of what we were doing, that helped us make decisions about how to do it a little bit better. Why else aren't you using the data that you could get? This headset just doesn't want to stay on. One of the conundrums I have, I'm having trouble with it. One of the conundrums I have in my own work, and I had for many years when I was doing a lot of design work, is that management was asking us to do things knowing that they wouldn't be effective. I mean, they would ask us to do training we knew didn't solve a problem, or they would ask us to deliver stuff that wasn't the answer. How many of you have dealt with that, right? I see heads nodding. So there are a number of reasons we don't do more with it. Tell me what you see as some problems with some measures here. IT, they're evaluating information technology technicians' ability to respond to problems by the number of tickets measured. Number of tickets closed. How many of you have done this? Tickets closed as a metric, all right? One time, I had a computer, the G key popped off of my keyboard. And I had even put tape on it to hold it while I waited for IT to come. I kind of learned to work without ever having to use the letter G. That made it kind of interesting. IT came and looked at it, and it's a difficult repair, apparently, so they just gave me a new laptop. Ticket closed. What you measure is what you get. It's just like the generators, right? So the ticket was closed. It's called Goodhart's Law. When a metric becomes a target, it is no longer a useful measure. We have a big problem in the United States with school children being promoted and evaluated. Teachers are paid and schools are rated based on the children's test scores. So what are the teachers going to do? They're going to find a way to get test scores, and it may not always be the best, and so no one is being served by that. The children are not being served. Teachers are learning to cheat. I once had a coworker who complained that we had too many completions on some of our courses because apparently making the training too good was a bad thing. All right, what's the problem here? They're trying to pull factors from the data that they have. These are hospitals. These are what the electronic medical record tells you about risk factors for stroke. Do you see the problem? The question assumes that people went to the doctor. Where I come from, it's assuming that they have health insurance. It assumes they have child care. It assumes they use the system, right? So there are inherent biases in that it just didn't occur to anybody. How about this one? The rate at which technology companies are hiring underrepresented staff. Is the hiring rate the best measure of that? What do you think? So let's talk about some better measures. Let's go back. What are better measures? If you're going to tie customer satisfaction to tickets closed, what are some other things we could be getting? What's some other simple descriptive data? You all are very quiet. Don't make me come out there and pick you out. Yes. Feedback from the customers. But see, here's the thing. I'm the customer. He gave me a new laptop. I'm thrilled. Not really, because setting up a new computer is kind of a pain, but I mean, he gave me a new machine. This is completely defeating the purpose. Maybe the customer's happy, but you're going to cost your department a fortune in new laptops if that's your response to every problem. What else can we look at? The ticket volume by type. Are there certain repairs that are a lot easier than others? Probably yes. My situation one time, IT, everything they did ended with, try this, and if that doesn't work, call me back. So they're generating their own phone calls, right? You see the problem? What else can we say with the number of tickets? Some better things. We can talk about the call wait time, the backlog of tickets that are not fixed. What happens to the tickets that aren't addressed? What's the time between ticket open and ticket closed? Right? We sometimes see these ridiculous forced measures. I've been involved several times in my career with performance management programs set up, and they invent these fake measures like the secretary will answer the phone by the third ring as some sort of standard of performance. You know, how are they supposed to do better? Like answer it before it rings, right? Just anticipate it ringing. I also have spent many hours of my life talking about acceptable medication error rates for nurses. Because you can't really say human beings make mistakes and it's okay to make med errors. But there's a big difference between giving somebody an extra aspirin and giving somebody the wrong drug or 10 times the wrong drug or something like that. It's very hard to quantify some of the things they pick. How about this thing about the electronic records? I mean, the hiring rate. If we want to know if we are doing a good job with our numbers for minority or underrepresentation in the workforce, what are better measures than just hiring? How about turnover? How about, what other things do we have? How about looking to see if turnover is tied to a toxic culture? That's a huge problem sometimes with tech companies, with why minorities turn over and over. How about the promotion rate among those hires and not just the in and out kind of number? Are we seeing people who have legitimate complaints who aren't talking because they have non-disclosure agreements? Tech companies, that's not unusual either. You know, what else is going on? Oh, I forgot to tell you about the hospital. They never looked at people who'd actually had strokes for all of that. So, you know, you never know. So the other thing here is we are looking at one tiny piece of data. And the thing we also aren't talking about here is just talk to some people. Do exit interviews and listen to people. Do stay interviews and listen to people. I think, have become too dependent on the idea of this perfect single metric, and it just doesn't work. So I'd like to spend the rest of our time together talking a little bit more about how we can get more complex data. So let's talk about that LMS you all have. Can we get past just completions? What other simple data is in your LMS that you could ask that might tell you something about what you're doing? How about how many days it takes to get all the completions? Why does it take us 45 days to get our whole staff to complete? Why is it the same 22 people who never complete anything? Are they all under the same manager? Are they all in the same department? Can we tie some of that to performance ratings? Here's a sign. If your top performers can still perform whether they go to your training or not, that might indicate a problem. Why is it that the lowest performers are always the ones who seem to get out of doing the training? There's lots of little simple numbers you could run, lots of little simpler things you could ask for. I had another thought there, but I lost it. It'll come back. Can you look at those, can you look at those completions by demographic, by type of audience, by literacy level, you have to be careful with age where I come from. I don't know what it's like here, but is there a reason everybody over 40 is doing so much better than the people under 25? Is there a problem with the training? Is there a problem with their preparation? All of this would be easy to find out through your HRIS systems and your LMS. How many of you are using something based on the Kirkpatrick taxonomy, the 5 levels? Okay, I knew Kirkpatrick, by the way, and he says there is no 5th level, just so you know. He told me that. He wrote it. So the thing with the Kirkpatrick taxonomy, there's nothing especially wrong with it. Kirkpatrick, because I knew him, said we do it backward. We should have started with what is the effect on performance, what is happening in the workplace, and work back to did they like it. So the thing is, it's all a backward look, though. Kirkpatrick gives us data, and management loves the data, but it doesn't tell us what went wrong, and it doesn't tell us how to fix it. So I invite you, and you might want to take a picture of this if the name's not familiar, to take a look at Brinkerhoff. Brinkerhoff talked about, and he has a nice method for looking at this. Brinkerhoff said we focus way too much on evaluating a particular training event and the effect of that particular event. He said it's like evaluating the wedding instead of the marriage. Did you go? Did you stay the whole time? Was the cake good? Do you feel good about marriage today? Right? It's taking too much of the context away. Off the top of your head, how many things can stand between a performer and actually doing the thing they've been taught to do? It is infinite. There can be bad supervisors, there can be poor resources, there can be coworkers that don't like it, there can be a failure to get equipment, there could be any number of reasons, but we don't look at that. We're looking at what happened to this training session and whether they liked it or not, and did they do okay. So Brinkerhoff asks us to look at what is happening and how to fix it. He is looking at the repair for this, and one of his method involves using what he calls success cases. The general idea is that in any situation like this, there are going to be failure stories and big success stories. You don't need to talk to everybody, but have deep conversations with a few and find out what really went on, find out if they feel that what they're doing is making a contribution, find out if they are actually using the training that we gave them, find out how much they're deviating from that training, because that happens quite a lot, find out what is really going on. Again, it's not just relying on simple completion data and the other kind of data that maybe you're getting from Kirkpatrick. You know, one of the things that we don't look at very well, and Brinkerhoff's a good way to find this out, is non-use. Let's say you train 50 technicians in something and 25 of them are using it all the time and they're doing great. Why is it some of the technicians aren't using it at all, and do we have an enrollment problem? Sometimes we train people on equipment we don't have yet, on software we don't have yet. What's going on with non-use? Are they not using it because they don't need the equipment, because they haven't had the need arise? Why are we training a bunch of people in equipment and needs that don't exist? Right? So this will help you identify some of that. So I encourage you to read up on Brinkerhoff. Another thing to look at, I invite you to take a look at Stufflebeam. I always said if I had a kitten, I was going to name it Mr. Stufflebeam. Daniel Stufflebeam talks about improving what you're doing and not just proving what you did. It is meant to help us work in present time to fix things while they're underway, or to see if things are going while they're underway, and then to find out whether we can even sustain them or transport them to some other place. So he has what he calls the CIPP model. C is context. Why are we doing this? Why did we say we wanted to do this? What is the need? What is the outcome that we desire? This is standard training analysis stuff. What are our objectives? What are we hoping to get done? What is it we want to do? All right. I is for inputs, and this is where I see people making a lot of mistakes. I had somebody the other day say that they aren't given access to their end users. What are the company says they want you to achieve, to launch this program, develop this program, run this program. They want to look at outcomes of this program, and then they don't give you enough money, which we're used to, actually. They don't give you access to subject matter experts. They don't give you access to the end users. Are they giving you the facility to do it? Are they giving you the material you need? Are they giving you the help? What are your inputs into this? Are they supporting the registration process? Are they talking to the managers? So what is going into this program that you're working on? Then there's the process. Is the process working the way we wanted it to? Are the right people attending it? How many of you have people who would come to everything you offer if they could? Right? They're happy fluffs. Yeah, right. Sometimes those people are taking up space on a waiting list back in the old days with classroom training, where other people couldn't come because we had lower priority people who were great super learners wanting to be there. How many people are not coming? Are there issues with the sign-up process? How many people complain they couldn't register to something because of your LMS? How many people got locked out, or the course wasn't there, or there was some technology failure that kept them from going? Is there some remote location? I used to deal all the time with nurses who did not get to CPR or first aid training because managers wouldn't let them be off from the shift work to go to the training that they were required to have. You know, what's going on with the process? I once had a secretary who said, this was back before we had LMSs, she said she liked when classes got canceled because then she didn't have to do all that paperwork. The Kirkpatrick method is going to tell you about that. So looking at Stufflebeam, and then the product, are we getting the outcomes we wanted? Is this going the way we hope? Do we want to fix it? Is there something we need to do? Do we need to sustain it? Do we need to look at killing it or revising it? And look at whether it is sustainable. Is this a program we could keep offering? Do we need to update it every year? Is this making a difference? Should we transport it to other departments, to other areas? So looking at Stufflebeam can help you look at the present. Looking at Brinkerhoff can help you identify what went wrong and how. All of this can work together. All of it can supplement what you're doing with Kirkpatrick. Like I said, it's hard and it takes time. Trying to triangulate some of this data and make more sense. And what I'm getting at is we need to get away from this idea of a single measure, and we need to look at systems. We need to look at what's going on as all the moving parts are considered. We need to look at the things that may be playing part in this. So the last thing I want to talk about, are any of you familiar with Atul Gawande? He's the medical writer for the New Yorker, fairly famous surgeon in the States. He's a wonderful speaker. He writes wonderful books. Gawande, G-A-W-A-N-D-E. One of his pet projects, and something he's written a lot about, is the issue of staph infections in hospitals. This is a nightmare for any of you who work in healthcare. Staph infections are a terrible problem. Infection control, we saw during COVID, infection control is a terrible beast to try to keep a hand on. So you get an organization that says we need to do something about staph infections, and so they implement hand washing training, infection control training. They also may put in more sinks. They may put in hand sanitizer dispensers everywhere. They may put signs on patient doors who are especially contagious or who have fevers. There may be a lot of things. It is very hard to isolate the effects of training from that. Right? The hand washing training is a part of a solution that we hope works. But one day found, in looking at it, often there was some other explanation. Look at why there's fewer staph infections on Ward 5. Look at why the staph infections surged in Ward 3. Gawande found in one case that it was the janitor who knew the answer. The janitor said that the staff down at this end of the hallway are not following procedures for throwing away contaminated materials. In another case, Gawande found it was that there was a charge nurse on the one shift who wasn't afraid to challenge a doctor and say, you need to wash your hands. Did you wash your hands? Why aren't you wearing a mask? So looking at all of those kinds of things. So stop looking for the discrete piece of data here. I don't know that you're ever going to successfully isolate the effects of hand washing unless you use a control group. But when you have a control group in a hospital, then you're risking letting people get infected. It's a challenging problem. You can tell a story about this, though. Let's say you did all the things I listed, and now staph infections have been cut by 75%. What are things you could measure here? You could measure how many times hand washing, people are washing their hands a day. You can measure gallons of soap, gallons of sanitizer. You can get feedback from the janitors and the other people there. You could get other data that you could have for management and your other stakeholders to say, this is how we can show, this is our story showing that the hand washing training is working. This is how we can start expanding what we've been doing with that. We understand it's playing a part, and this is the part it played. Brinkerhoff is very good at explaining how to write that up so that it makes more sense to management than a single piece of data. So, I have seen over the years, particularly with social media, which was a specialty of mine for a long time, this idea of vanity metrics. We want to know if people like our content, so we count the number of clicks on the website. We need to get past that and get to a more robust view of what we're doing and what we're trying to do. So begin with the end in mind. Focus on what it is you're trying to accomplish. Consider real measures that make more sense. Look for aggregation rather than single points. Like I said about, okay, you count completions. What else can we find out about completions that might shed more light on this? Try to find somebody you can train on or who is open to learning about interpreting data and reporting on data. See if you can find ways to find a story in all of it. It doesn't have to be difficult. It just needs to be better than we're doing. So I hope you found this helpful, and thanks very much for having me. Thanks.